All righty. On another week, I'm with Logical Checkmate. Paul, how's it going, Paul?
Yeah, all good. That's the trick American question, right? Where you actually are not supposed to answer that.
Hey, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself again, just because this might be the first time some of your audiences have seen you.
My name is actually Pavel. I go by Paul in English. It's easier, for me. I'm from Czech Republic. Basically, quite a lot interested in the Kyle Rittenhouse saga from the beginning, because I am interested in self-defense, firearms, and other stuff. And basically, a friend sent me a video. Check these jackasses chasing a guy with an AR-15. What do you think will happen? Well, people got shot, as one would guess, and okay, sure, self-defense, blah, 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 and then bam, he's getting charged. Okay, what's happening here? And so I looked into it more and more, and just the arguments, etc., that are being floated out there, or just the mistruths, and I was like, no, you can see it on a video that didn't happen like that, etc., etc., and I was like, dude, I can stand by or try to basically tell people truth. I'm in a wee bit of a better position, or I have a certain advantage, me being from Europe, me being from outside of the United States, that people don't automatically presume I'm biased or I'm a evil Republican, etc., etc. You know what I mean? So yeah, I basically started doing videos on that, and with here at Johnny Walker Dread, we got together, started talking, and decided to do here and there some sit downs. So yeah, that's me.
And by the way, I am Johnny Walker Dread. I do host this weekly channel. You host it on occasion as well. I do have a YouTube channel that has, I think, 150 videos the last time I looked, and maybe about 120 of them are about Kyle Rittenhouse. I am a person who people do make assumptions about, given this, the whole 9 yards, and being from Oklahoma. A lot of people do make the assumption that I'm a big Trumper. That's simply not the case. I have very little respect for him. I have even less respect for our current administration. But no, I don't fall into the typical categories that a lot of people think I do. But I will say that I'm probably conservative. More conservative than most. But my issue with Kyle Rittenhouse was simply, when the whole situation was persecution. I looked at what was happening here as sort of a lining of the stars to go after some kid. And it looked like everybody was in on the game. You had tech companies deplatforming. You had newspapers basically recasting all of the stories about him. You had a district attorney's office that was doing everything they could to throw him in jail. I mean, and I'm not saying throwing him in jail for crimes. I'm talking about anything they could just get him in jail. And I saw all that and I thought, dang, I've never seen anything quite like this. And I figured, well, somebody's got to be on his side. Everybody has to have somebody on their side. So I started diving in deep. And of course, the more I learned about what took place, the more convinced I am that he is not guilty. And at this point, I mean, in my mind, he's not guilty. And that's all there is to it. And of course, we've talked about this numerous times. But again, I have over 100 videos on Kyle Rittenhouse on my YouTube channel. My dumb argument series is up to 61 now.
Nice.
This just goes to show you how bad it's been here. And keep in mind, there are a few dumb arguments put out by the pro-Kyles, but there are only about 5 or 6 of those. The rest of them are just the anti-Kyles and all of the insane arguments they use to try to convict him in their minds. And I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about first. Well, go ahead and mention what your topic of interest is here.
Basically, because we have some haters who think we are, be it blind, be it stupid, be it, I don't know, some actually accuse me that I'm paid actor, basically. And I was like, okay, thanks, I guess I look fairly good, like that I get this accusation. And with Johnny Walker Dread, a few weeks ago we were talking, and he asked me what would make me view Kyle as guilty, basically. And I told him a certain scenario that in my mind is possible, however unlikely, given logistics, etc., where certain people were leave it at that. And basically we both agreed. I knew this from, I had this decision that I will not make this information public or this ID public, because it is way too easy to basically falsify with false testimony, and then Kyle would have a very hard time basically disproving it. And so we decided both to basically sit on that ID. But I would just like to say to people, hey, we are not blind. We think that Kyle is innocent, but we know there might be something we don't know where he is guilty. But as of now, all the information, all the video evidence, all the statements, etc., they point to clear self-defense. And here is my basically interest, or how can someone look at those videos that are available and say, oh no, that is just a murder, that is literally presuming, like you see it quite often, presuming the worst, only the worst, nothing but the worst. Yeah, so just that.
Yeah, and when you first told me this, I mean, and I brought it up, I said, because I'd been thinking about it too, like, when you see Kyle Rittenhouse's name trending, what's your first reaction is probably like mine, like, oh no, what's happened, right? Yeah. And so you open it up, and in your mind you're thinking, what could have come out that would paint a completely different picture? Mm-hmm. And of course, once you actually look at what happened, it's like nothing ever amounts. That's just the way things have been going. So every time his name trends, it's over something stupid. And I started thinking more and more about it, though. What is it that I would worry about if I was his defense attorney? And that's when I brought it up to you. And you actually proposed an event that would have changed my mind even. And when I heard, I said, yeah, that would be a problem. And at that point, if that happened, I'd be definitely striking for a plea deal. However, we both agreed it's extremely unlikely.
Yeah.
But, and I know what the viewers are thinking. Well, tell us what it is. And as you mentioned, hey, man, under any other normal circumstances, I wouldn't have any troubles with it. Mm-hmm. Not with this DA. No. I mean, because, and I don't think Michael Gravely would quite stoop to this level. I mean, I think he's he's got a lot of problems. Binger would.
Yeah,
I don't doubt about it. And so I agree with you. By the way, I think it is on record. I think we recorded it.
Yes.
We on our final product that we pushed out, we deleted it. So it's there. But, and I agree. If that event did transpire, I would have to rethink what, my stance was. Now, well, okay, I was going to make another comment, but then I was going to make a comment that was wrong. So I'm going to stop while I'm ahead.
Yeah. So basically that's it, guys. We are not blind fanatics or something like that. We just look at evidence and come to our own conclusions, like not pushed by any bias or something like that.
I caught a lot of grief back in the day when I said that Kyle was guilty of the minor possession charge. Because I went in, and you go back to my first video I did on this, minor possession. And I heard Mark Richards's argument, and I went in and looked at that statutes myself, and I came to the conclusion that Mark Richards' argument is reasonable, I don't think it's going to get Kyle off the hook on that. And I said, here's what the state is going to say, and I have a feeling the state is going to pound him on this. And I kept it for quite a long time, and it was Running Dog X, a Twitter follower, that came in and said, you're missing it. That it's not that statute that makes the difference. It's the other one. And I said, oh, come on. The other one's all about carrying a rifle under the age of 16. Not even relevant. And that's when Running Dog X said, yeah, it is. Because it adds context to the other one. And that's when I went back and looked. And I remember the day very well, because I looked at it. I read it, but then I had to go to a party. Mm-hmm. So I'm driving down in my truck, driving along and thinking this thing through. I said, holy shit, he's got it. Now, my argument when I reformulated it was a little different than what he did. I'm not looking at it quite the same, but it was still, the kernel of it is the same. So I can take a little bit of credit if it's reasonable. Sure. If not, I disown it, right? But I could take a little credit for sort of massaging it. But I think Running Dog X really deserves the credit for coming up with this idea in the first place. And so I changed my mind, put out another video that said I was wrong about Kyle's possession charge. So my view of it is there's no point in hiding that which is going to come out anyway.
Sure.
And so to sit there and try to be in denial is not going to do anybody any good.
Yeah. And I just basically added those statues as well. And look, you are definitely more experienced when it comes to reading/interpreting U.S. law. But we both came to the conclusion that initially that Kyle would be able to possess it, or at least on mine, I was like, so is he or is he not? Because there were like to me there were two basically statues that were kind of telling, being contradicting each other to a degree. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'm not a lawyer, but if I would be, for example, 17-year-old kid and reading it, I would be like, oh, okay, so I can carry a rifle. It's not a problem. You know what I mean? It could have been a simple, innocent mistake on Kyle's part.
It's tricky. It's tricky because, and this is a case where it is so important. I'm not a lawyer, but I know what kind of is like to try to be one, I guess. And you have to work so hard to understand how the opponent is going to look at this.
Yeah.
And it all came down to that Kyle is not in compliance with a certain subsection. And Mark Richards is saying he doesn't have to be because it doesn't apply. And I thought, what would the other side say? And the other side would say he still has to be in compliance.
Yeah.
And that's when I said, oh, shoot, Kyle is on the hook for this. He's going to have to swallow it. And keep in mind, it's not Kyle that has to worry about this really more than Dominick Black. His hide is more on the line with that minor possession thing than Kyle's is, because if Kyle is found guilty of the minor possession, now the attention turns towards Dominick, who provided him the gun. Yep. So Dominick is the one that worried. As far as Kyle's concerned, who cares? I mean, minor possession, even if he's found guilty of it, he's going to get time served for it, probation at most. His problem is the murder charges.
Yeah, 100%. And basically, could we? I told you once. I basically developed, let's say, this in my mind, this concept how to talk with people who have a different opinion on Kyle than we have. And if we could basically try it right now, and all those basically dumb arguments against Kyle and stuff like that, if you could, basically, if you could play the devil's advocate or the other side, basically, a wee bit, so basically what I figured, and it's pretty good at identifying the disconnect that you have, so you can zero on that. Because some people have problems that the gun was illegal. Some people have the problem that the person was unarmed, etc. Yeah? So you can basically have it. So we strip it down all the way down to the bare bones and start adding the layers back up. So and down, please commenters, if somebody thinks that Kyle Rittenhouse is guilty of, for example, a murder, tell us where at the, let's say, level 1, level 2, level 3, etc., where it is and why. Yeah. So first, first scenario. Kyle is just walking down the street. He gets jumped by Mr. Rosenbaum, as was seen on the video, by Mr. Zeminski fired, etc. Everything that transpired, as was on the video. Do you think it was a murder or self-defense? And by the way, the rifle is legal in this scenario, yeah? Johnny, what are basically the arguments, let's say, in this?
Well, okay, so first of all, just as an example, the whole thing about being ambushed, the people who have formulated that Kyle is guilty don't know about that. They haven't seen it. All they know is they see Kyle being chased, because that's the part that made the news. And it's up to them to formulate an assumption as to how that started.
Okay.
And now here's where you have to ask yourself, how did the people arrive where they are? And they're making a number of logical mistakes that to get there. And one of those is that in the absence of definite information, I'll assume what I think is the most likely, and then I'll call it reality.
Okay.
So whatever I think is the most likely thing to happen must have been what happened.
Can I adjust it then? What happened to me, I got one time beaten up by two dudes who I was looking like this up when I was 16, because I looked at them. I was walking down the street, like heard from a side alley, like noise. I looked at two big dudes, and I was like, okay, like continue walking, and suddenly, like I got chased down and basically beaten out because I dared to look at them. So let's presume that would be a similar situation. Kyle walks down, basically, he looks at them, they're like you want to start the problem, he gets chased and blah, blah, blah. Do you know some arguments, basically, that people throw out? I guess the unarmed, basically shooting unarmed person, right?
Well, okay.
No, I mean, it's just the argument, right? I just want to keep it quick. That's the argument that Kyle shot an unarmed person, right? No, that would be that. No, that's what the people would use in this situation. Yeah, okay. I literally made a video, and I dare to say I literally proved that it's complete BS with both empiric evidence. You can watch it, think for yourself. And also with examples, with an example from United States of America where a person, got jumped by unarmed attacker who was also, by the way, shirtless. He shot him 3 times. The person later died, the attacker, and the self-defender was completely fine. Justified self-defense, no fuss, it was all good. So that's let's say the first argument that the people will, because I cannot think of any other, basically. If Kyle walks down the street, there's no protest, nothing like that. He has the rifle legally. There's nothing basically to it. So if we add another layer, the rifle is now illegal. Is it murder or is it self-defense? Right? Doesn't change a thing in my mind. And is there some other argument that? Except that people are like, oh, the rifle was illegal, therefore he cannot defend himself.
Yeah, there is another argument. And the argument they have, it's hard to get them to come out and tell you what their argument is. For one, they want to go into a character assassination thing instead. So they begin into, Kyle's a white supremacist, Kyle was out there to hurt people. So they'll lay on that. But if you ask them, why is it that he's guilty of murder? I can tell you what's driving it. They don't know how the interaction with Rosenbaum started because they didn't see that part.
Sure.
So they make an assumption, and that is that Kyle must have done something to cause Rosenbaum to have to chase him. And the reason why they're basing it on it is Kyle is armed, Rosenbaum is not. The armed person is always the aggressor in their book. And so what did Kyle do? Kyle must have threatened him or something like that. But again, this is where we make assumptions because we're trying to fill in the gaps. And they know that Kyle's walking down the street. The next thing they know, he's being chased. They don't understand what took place in between. So let's make an assumption that fits with the most likely scenario. Kyle is armed, Rosenbaum's not. Only a lunatic would attack an armed person. Therefore, Kyle must have attacked Rosenbaum somehow, and Rosenbaum got fed up and started chasing him. Now, of course, it's a terrible legal argument. But they don't understand that either. And this is where it kind of brings up another problem they make. And that is, whatever I kind of feel like is wrong must be codified. So if Kyle provoked the attack, I kind of feel that that's kind of wrong, and therefore that must be the law. It doesn't work like that. And the problem with it is that once Kyle flees, everything changes. Rosenbaum does not have to chase him. He did. And therefore now Rosenbaum is the primary aggressor.
Mhm.
That's how the law looks at it. But they don't feel that way. They feel that, for example, walking down the street with a rifle like that, I feel that that's really bad. I feel there's something wrong with that. Therefore, there must be a law against it. But no, it doesn't quite work like that. And again, this also comes from a culture shock, where a lot of people are commenting are those who live in areas where that probably is really illegal, but not in Wisconsin. It's really common.
Just guys, I've come from a continent where open carry is completely forbidden. If I'm truly not counting hunters in a forest, open carry is on the whole continent illegal. And I looked at it and, Wisconsin's open carry. So, okay, that's their thing. That's their culture. And I'm like, I cannot basically judge them for it, or you know what I mean? Like basically that I cannot put my values on them, etc. Like if I can do it, where literally again on the whole continent it's forbidden, why cannot you be like basically see it differently when in the United States there's plenty of states where open carry is legal?
Yeah, and again, this also comes from the fact that everybody thinks they're a lawyer. And am I guilty of that? Oh yeah. You ought to see all of the videos I put out on the law, right? But I do have one advantage, is I know I'm not a lawyer. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to open up the statutes and read them like hell, because I am not comfortable in my understanding of Wisconsin law to be able to spout my opinions off, but they are. And so what happens is that a lot of people think they understand self-defense laws. Some of them might know their own self-defense laws in their own state and think, well, that must be what it's like in Wisconsin. No, if you live in New York City, what's self-defense there is nothing like that it is in Wisconsin. And also the carrying of firearms. So again, this shows up all the time. People, they have a little bit of knowledge about the law, which is always dangerous. They watch some television shows. They've watched, they've heard banter from their friends about what's legal and what's not. And by that time, they sort of formulate their own understanding of what the court system's like, what the legal system's like, and it often is completely polar opposite of what the actual reality is.
Sure.
And so you see these misconceptions showing up all the time. As an example, this perfect example here, you can't cross-examine a witness on their background. Oh, the hell you can't. You can do it all the time. Now, there are certain things you can't ask them about, but if you have a witness on the stand who has a burglary charge in his past, you absolutely can bring that up. Yep. Why? It's a crime of dishonesty. But here's where they have heard that you can't ask a rape victim about her past sexual activity. That's true. But that doesn't mean you can't ask a witness about anything else. And so again, they have a little bit of knowledge about the law based on
they apply it
to everything. And it just doesn't work like that. There's just no substitute for hard work. And I have poured in, I don't know how many scores of hours into the Wisconsin statutes, and I will never know as much as a Wisconsin self-defense lawyer will know.
Yeah.
I mean, however, I know more than most lawyers who are not from Wisconsin know, because I've actually looked at the statutes.
Yeah, and just basically, when it comes, there's a difference between the two of us, is that you are really focused on law, and I'm basically, I basically try to stay away from the law as much as possible, and instead, like natural right and wrong. You know what I mean? Or basically a standard in a society where, hey, if this person can shoot an unarmed person, that means Kyle can shoot an unarmed person when he's running away. For example, if this person can use an illegal firearm, Kyle can use a legal firearm. I'm trying to basically put these things together like that because I absolutely hate double standards. Like,
well, this whole thing about shooting an unarmed person kind of exposes where a lot of these people have got their thinking all out of whack, because they will claim can't shoot an unarmed person. Yeah. But then when it comes to Ashli Babbitt, for some reason, it's okay to shoot her. Now, by the way, I'm not saying that the shooting was justified or unjustified. What I'm saying is, though, is that if you really do believe that you can never shoot an unarmed person, then how do you explain your belief that it was justified shooting her? And it turns out that their thinking, their understanding of the law is inconsistent because they just haven't dived deep enough into it.
Yeah, and just with the Ashli Babbitt, honestly, I will do the fucking video tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
I want to pump it up there because objectively speaking, there's a big difference. But there are many other examples where unarmed person got shot by a self-defender, and self-defender was like not even charged. It's like, oh, duh, you know what I mean? And not to mention, again, I made a video where with literally empiric evidence, I show that you can get killed by an unarmed attacker.
Yeah.
Like, we've been, as a species, we've been killing each other since the beginning, like Cain and Abel, does that ring a bell? Maybe, you know what I mean? Like, guys, come on.
Yeah, and this is also a case where people will come back at me and say, oh, yeah, well, what about the January 6th insurrection? What about it? I haven't said anything about that. Yeah. They assume that because of this and that I'm a big Trumper and I'm all, about the January 6th, pro January 6th, whatever. No, I will say this. Whether the shooting of Ashli Babbitt was justified depends on the elements of the crime in the District of Columbia. Yeah. And if the police officer, he's going to apply affirmative self-defense, and he already has. If the elements of that are met, then it was justified. And I don't give a damn if Ashli was on the, one side or the other of the political spectrum. It doesn't make any difference.
Sure,
and so I got into a lot of heat with a lot of the Capitol Hill, supporters about that because I would not come out and say that the shooting of her was unjustified. But I'm not going to say that it was unjustified because I don't know enough about what took place. And if the elements are there to provide the affirmative self-defense for that police officer, he's innocent.
Yeah,
that's all there's to it.
I don't think it was self-defense. I think it is something else. Again, make a video on it. Don't want to get into that. And again, you don't have to share, basically this view. And I, to a degree, don't, because some people cannot simply think, and I don't want it to basically splatter, like around.
Well, it would have to have been self-defense or the defense of others to justify a lethal response like that.
Well. If I have an angle basically, and some experience, like with not from the United States, but from other places, and yeah, like I hope I will explain myself better there.
Okay, and I don't want to go into it very much detail.
Sure.
So let me correct myself. There might be other affirmative defenses there, given that it was a Capitol building that might apply. I don't know. I have not dived deep into that January 6th thing, and so I'm really not free to kind of say one way.
So that's that. But yeah, you're right. When it comes to, let's say, anti-Kyles, and they are like, they don't think, like that deeply that it is something else. But again, there are other people that got, shot unarmed. But basically, to get back to a degree to the, let's say, circles. The first one was just cows walking down the street, rifle is legal. The second one, the rifle is illegal. Yeah. So, and he cannot defend himself. Are you idiotic? You know what I mean? That basically he has the rifle right on him, and that's a lunatic charging him. And now what would have to go through his mind? Well, I could shoot him with this rifle, but it is illegal, so I'm gonna have to let him bash my brains in. It's lunacy. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, well, one of the questions I often ask is, okay, you're in Kyle's shoes, what would you do? And they would basically say, well, I wouldn't be there in the first place. That's true of every self-defense case. I don't care what it is. Well, I was in my house.
Exactly.
Well, you could have gotten out of the house. You didn't have to be home. I mean, what kind of argument is that? But they try to pull that. Of course, that's 100% pure hindsight, which has no role in self-defense.
And again,
Yeah, you can never use that in a self-defense case, and they think that you can. That if you just had not bothered to go into that bar with all those dangerous criminals, you wouldn't have been attacked, and you wouldn't have had to shoot them. So it's your fault. No. No court in any state is going to buy that argument.
Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, or maybe didn't specify enough. Both the first scenarios, there's no riot, no protest. He's just walking, I don't know, from, for example, his uncle, like drop him off, and he's going for, I don't know, home to Dominick's place, for example, just walking down the street. No protest. So there was the first and second. Write down place, where do you basically disagree. I think we debanked both those arguments right now, right here. Yeah. So third, let's add another layer. So that are the protests, and the riots. Now we are getting where most of the people go with intent and stuff like that, but they presume the worst. Mm-hmm. And I must say, I remembered one, and I was like, dude, I'm getting old. Because there's another reason why Kyle and Dominick could be out there. And it didn't occur to me. What is the thing that will motivate 17/18-year-old boys the most to do something?
Boredom.
Well, that's one.
Not all of the reasons that Kyle was there are necessarily all that noble.
100%.
Right? And this is where the pro-Kyles kind of make a mistake, and they assume that the only reason why Kyle was there was to satisfy his reason, his noble beliefs. But he's a 17-year-old kid. Not everything he's going to do is going to be geared around doing the right thing, right? And I think that part of the reason why they went out to there is because it's a hot August night in Wisconsin. It's a small town. There's not a lot going on, and there's a lot of excitement going on downtown. I remember when I was a kid cruising down Main Street up and down for hours, right? Well, and that was because there's nothing else to do, because I grew up in a really small town. Sure. And so it would only be natural that, given the opportunity to grab your rifles and go out and hang out on a property and keep it from being, vandalized and stuff, that's a little exciting. And I don't know if hardly any 17-year-olds would turn that down, so... I think part of the reason why they were there was because, it's something to do. And you could see it, by the way, at the very opening of the videos when they're interviewing him and he's at the garage, and they're watching all of the mayhem down the street. It's like a couple blocks away. They're nowhere near the riots. They're not even trying to go to the riots. They're just hanging out on the property, and it's like they're watching like a 4th of July show. And they're like, oh, yeah. So I think that part of it was that they're getting a little bit of something to do. I also think that the Daily Caller dude is there, and here's an opportunity to get a little bit of notoriety. And a lot of people, oh yeah, that's what he's all about, fame and fortune. Hey, 17 years old, getting a chance to be on TV. Of course, who would turn it down? Doesn't make him evil. Doesn't make him a murderer.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
I just sorry, it's because of the delay, I sometimes think you end up. I'm sorry if I jumped into you speaking, but I think you're definitely getting old too, because I was like, he was earlier that day cleaning the graffiti from a high school, right? Yeah. What are the chances that he and Dominick, for example, met there, young pretty lady, and she was like, oh yeah, that's so cool that you're helping and stuff, and my uncle, by the way, he's going with the militia, he did or with the guys, basically to protect businesses and stuff like that, it's so cool, he's so brave. And then Kyle would be like, oh yeah, me and Dominick, we're going too. We're going too, you know what I mean? And you can say it's stupid, but it's innocent. Come on. I can tell you, I would totally do that. You know what I mean? And I'm by the way, if you think I'm some crazy freaking right-winger or something like that, you could not be wrong about me. Because me being from Europe, I would be basically, at least when it comes to policies, economy and stuff like that, I would be to a degree extreme lefty, kind of. You know what I mean? I would be there with God damn it, with Neil from B Radio. I was basically watching one of his videos, and I was like, oh yeah, it's like my spirit. And I agree here, and here. You know, like yeah, that's what I would say too. You know what I mean?
Well, you know, at 17, you're not really supposed to do everything centered around logic and goodwill. I mean, when I would suggest most of the money I ever made into my car, and I had the hot rod. You know, it was a Dodge with 3 2-barrels, and you know, and I poured in thousands of dollars back in the time when that was a lot of money. And why? Because I wanted to impress chicks, for one.
There you go.
And the other one, I wanted to impress all my friends. That was it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people now look back and think, well, that was kind of silly. But at 17, it didn't seem silly. And at 17, I don't think Kyle felt silly by going down there and trying to help. But I also want to say something. The fact that Kyle wanted to help is part of it too. I think that he has a very strong sense of community.
Yes.
You know,
I'll agree with you on that.
Yeah.
In the basically in one of the videos, I forget where I put it, but the lady that he accepted into his care that was apparently shot in the foot, or I think with rubber bullet or something like that. Well, I immediately was like, she's from Antifa, right? She was clad completely in the black. Also, she didn't have the bandana on her face, but she had it just under her chin. I was like, she's an Antifa member. And I picked it out on it right away. And Kyle, well, he either didn't notice or he didn't care because he wanted to help people. You know what I mean? And you can say, again, stupid and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay, then he made a mistake. That doesn't make him a guilty of a, you know, like basically a murder, etc., etc. But I would like to say that, hey, guys, in the end, none of it matters if he was there for good reasons, for stupid reasons, or for even nefarious reasons, because he ran away. That's the bottom line. You cannot, you know, basically, once he... so basically, my point on it is that we, everywhere, the Western civilization, we are always telling, hey, no matter in what situation you are, in ego battle, in, I don't know, even if you're making in a bad situation, you can always run away. You don't have to fight. Here, you are flipping that on its head. Basically, that Kyle, once he found himself in a bad situation, even if it was his own making, he could not run away.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, let's face it. Just about any time that you use a gun in self-defense, you probably did some things that heightened the chances of that happening. You know, I mean, you could always do hindsight on that. Yeah, however, it doesn't make any difference. The laws don't allow you to go back for good reason, because we don't. If you did allow the law to say, if you really don't belong on a certain street, you can't use self-defense, then you have no rights at that point. You have no right to freedom of travel or nothing, because a person can attack you and you can't even defend yourself.
Yeah.
You know, there's a reason why self-defense laws don't take these things into account. But I'll say this, if one of those Antifa people had been attacked and used self-defense, you think that the people, the anti-Kyles, would be saying, well, you know, that person was there for really bad reasons, for rioting and stuff like that. You lose your self-defense rights. Oh, hell no. They would be saying, it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter. You know, they would change their tunes completely. I would, and I can say this comfortably. If an Antifa person defended themselves and it met the elements of self-defense, they're not guilty.
Yeah, 100%. And just basically two things, you know, like one other. The first, you said, that everybody can do something to a big degree better to avoid the conflict where a lethal force needs to be used. The example I used in my video on the unarmed attacker is a deadly threat. There was basically a black person only just going to a restaurant and stuff like that, and in came group of white guys who were apparently slinging some racial epithets and stuff like that, like at him, at the self-defender, And by the way, I hate, like that I never use so much race. Basically, I use all the time when I'm speaking with Americans, what I mean. I literally never used to describe somebody by their race, but just, yeah, sorry. It's just
avoid it in these discussions.
Yeah, and basically they were probably calling them N-words and stuff like that, and then they were leaving, the white guys, and they one of the dudes offered a hand, like in an apology, I guess, and the self-defender refused to shake his hand, and then the guy basically swung at him and stuff like that, and the third person came in, he got shot. And you can then basically make an argument that, hey, if he would have shaken his hand, there would not be any shooting. Therefore, he is guilty. That's BS, what I mean? He didn't do anything wrong. He could have maybe potentially do more if you would basically swallow his pride and stuff like that. But I'm telling you, I would not shake that person's hand either. I would be like, no, not interested, mate. If he would be slinging some, hate speech basically my way.
It's called a cause-effect fallacy. If you hadn't sold that guy the gas to drive to Kenosha, he wouldn't have shot anybody. It's your fault. Come on, that's the kind of thing that if X precedes Y, then X is to blame for Y, and it just doesn't work like that. And it won't stand up in court. I mean, the judge will sniff that out immediately. Well, it's the opposition will. So. Yeah, I mean, but again, this goes back to what I was saying before. People think they understand the law, and they think that such an argument is really sound, but they haven't had any critical thinking classes, and they don't recognize that, that whole line of argument that if you hadn't done this, this wouldn't have happened. Therefore, you're to blame for it.
Okay.
Don't work. And
okay. And the other thing you said was that if Antifa would be in the situation, the people would flip. They did, however. I told you we first time we talked about it, and I'm definitely cutting this for a video. The Proud Boys / Antifa, was it December? What was the election night in December 6th or?
November.
November. Okay, sorry. No, I'm not bad with days.
I kind of set that one out.
Anyway, could be wrong even on that. Anyway, but the important thing is there was some rally / protest / whatever of Proud Boys in Washington, and there was obviously Antifa in counter protest. And as far as I know, I don't know this is the case, but this is what the people, be it Young Turks or the actual Justice Warrior. I don't know if you know his YouTube channel. He's he's a for you guys who don't know, actual Justice Warrior is quite conservative, I would say, and the Young Turks is a pseudo news channel, very popular, 5 million subscribers, and they are insanely liberal, but less than truthful, to say the least.
Yeah, I've done a few videos on my channel about them.
And basically, what is seen on a video is that an Antifa member was in some kind of a verbal confrontation with Proud Boys, and he started to walk away. They basically chased him down, smacked him over the head. He turned, presented his knife, and then he got pummeled basically, and he stabbed some guys. Everybody survived, some heavy injuries though. Right. And basically what the guys are saying, or what should have happened, or what I know that what was the information that I have, and what the actual Justice Warrior and the Young Turks were claiming. This is important because they came to the conclusions. is that the Antifa member was there and was yelling, trying, basically at the Proud Boys. You know what I mean? Insulting them, I guess, and stuff like that. And so actual justice warrior was like, hey, see, he was picking a fight. To which I say, well, yeah, he was yelling. He was basically exercising his First Amendment right on the Proud Boys. You know what I mean? Like, even if he yells something bad, they are like supposed to be, like something like, hey, you Proud Boys, you suck, and the Proud Boys should be like, oh, okay, that's nice, buddy, cheerio. That should be basically it. But hey, they attack him. The another thing is, he then retreated, even though you could make it the point that he provoked, like the attack. He was trying to retreat. He was walking away. He got chased down, just as Kyle. He pulled out his knife, which apparently, because it's a switchblade in Washington, is very illegal. There you go. Another, like similarity to Kyle. And he then got, by unarmed people, he got, pummeled, like basically. And Kyle was attacked by unarmed Joseph Rosenbaum. And the Young Turks basically came to the conclusion, oh, it's obvious, it's the most obvious self-defense case ever. Yeah. And the actual justice warrior came to the opposite. No, the guy is absolutely guilty of something, I don't know, heavy, like injuries, blah, blah. I honestly forgot what he was saying, like that. But I'm not, no. They are both the same. They are both cases of self-defense because they try to, both Kyle and this Antifa member, they try to walk away. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily the case because I honestly didn't look into it that deep. But the point is, both the Young Turks and actual justice warrior, at the time of making those videos, they thought that was the case, and they came to completely opposite conclusions, even though they scream it's the fucking same as Kyle Rittenhouse, and it should be both self-defense.
Well, and there's even a more closer
sure,
analogy, and this is one we had just thought of, and I don't know why anybody hasn't even thought of this one. Austin, Texas, a protester carries an AK-47 protest, and he, unlike Kyle, they asked him, why are you bringing this rifle? He basically said to intimidate people.
I know.
So there's this car stopped. He walks up to it, and from what I could see, it looks like he was raising the rifle up.
Yeah.
The guy inside blasted him to oblivion. And all the same anti-Kyles were back at that time saying that's completely unjustified. So what if he had an AK-47? That doesn't mean you can shoot him. Yeah. I'm like, wait, how does that work? It's like, so the hypocrisy is everywhere. Again, and you have to go and look. It's Texas. Laws of self-defense are much different in Texas than where these people live.
Yeah.
And the guy in the car, I would like to go and dive into it a little deeper and find out whatever kind of happened about that. But the guy in the car might have been perfectly justified in self-defense, might not have been. But you have to look at the laws. You have to look deeply at what happened. But they didn't. They just assumed that, well, he's on the BLM side and he got shot. Oh, my God. I mean, that's terrible. No, it depends. Yeah, so the hypocrisy is everywhere.
And I would like to basically ask if we have some guys that believe that Kyle A shot BLM supporters, or that he did it because he's somehow anti-BLM. Are you saying that those guys that were trying to basically push a burning dumpster into a gas station, they represent BLM? That's what BLM stands for, you know what I mean? Where you're trying to basically cause a massive explosion, and you wonder why somebody wanted to basically extinguish the fire. Yeah, no, obviously it doesn't, and there will be the answer, you know what I mean? So what about the other actions of Joseph Rosenbaum, for example? He was in a group that was saying, where somebody was saying, hey, let's jump them and check their guns. Then he put his t-shirt around his face. You know what I mean? Before he was committing arson, he didn't feel like having a t-shirt around his face. But later on, when he jumped Kyle, he had a t-shirt around his face. So, I mean, his head could have been cold. But yeah, if you believe that, I have a, bridge in Brooklyn for sale, and cheap.
Well, and the other problem that a lot of people have at analyzing this case is they think that self-defense depends on facts that have been established after the fact. No, it goes by what the person would have reasonably thought at the time. And therefore, a man covering his face with a t-shirt and chasing after you, it doesn't matter what his motive was. All that matters is, what did you think his motive was when he was chasing you? They don't get that. They don't understand that. And they think that they can look at it later and say, well, it was only a BB gun. Therefore, Kyle didn't really face a deadly threat at all. Yeah, it doesn't work like that. And by the way, I'm going to have another one here. 17-year-old kid in Georgia was playing with a Wii. The cops came to knock on his door to serve a warrant for his dad. He opens the door. Female cop just blew him all to hell, killed him. And guess what? He only had a Wii controller in his hand. All right? The question is, what did she think? That's what matters. And frankly, I think she's a big scaredy cat, but okay, whatever.
I have a better example. What was the police shooting where it was said that there was the no-knock warrant and...
Breonna Taylor.
Yeah. By the way, just want to say how police handle it. It's like terrible. They shot the place to hell. It's like, it's a fucking like apartment building and they're just shooting willy-nilly. It's like terrible. But the boyfriend, this is the truth, and he actually shot first, but he was under the perception he didn't know that was the police, and he shot first, believing those were intruders. That was his perspective at the time, even though police was there completely legally, and he was not charged for the shooting the boyfriend. Mm-hmm. That's precisely what you were just describing. That is, if basically, if it would be objectively, if the person could be objectively looking at it, hey, the boyfriend should have been charged, but he had his subjective perspective, which was reasonable to believe that those were basically robbers or armed intruders, etc., and he was fully justified at that moment to basically fire his gun.
Yeah, there's another nuance to the law there that, again, kind of shows how people just don't read it carefully. It talks about an unlawful interference, and I'm using Wisconsin law, but I'm sure Kentucky's is probably a little similar here. But it talks about unlawful interference, and people will jump on that and say, no, those are police officers. That's lawful. It doesn't matter. It's what he thinks. And the law is very clear.
Yes.
If a person feels that they are being attacked by somebody with unlawful interference, they are entitled to use self-defense. If the boyfriend did not know they were police, then it doesn't matter if they are.
Yeah, precisely. That's why police, where they go, or bridge door and stuff like that, they shout, hey, LAPD, hey, police, the sheriff's department, whatever, to announce, hey, peace officers are going in. We are, at least in theory, some people will say they are a threat, but at least in theory, they should not be a threat to you if you, for example, don't shoot at them, don't fight them, etc.
By the way, in that case, they're claiming that the police did not announce themselves. The police are claiming they did. My gut feeling is they probably did, and they just did announce it very loud. But if it was me, everybody in that apartment complex would have known it was a police officer coming through that door.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have been that loud. But I have a feeling they probably were not, outspoken enough about it. And boy, you just can't make that mistake. You have to bellow that thing so loud that people on the other side know that it's a police officer. Yep. And, there was a case in Wisconsin where similar thing, no knock warrant, police barged in, didn't announce themselves, guy grabbed a gun, shot the police officer. By the way, he was a convicted felon in possession of a weapon. He can't, but guess what? Doesn't matter. Still self-defense.
Sure.
The court ruled that, it is part of the case law in Wisconsin. Those of you guys out there who think that Kyle loses his self-defense rights because he was armed illegally, forget it. Doesn't work.
And don't forget illegally, and I bet that was a quite serious crime that he was armed illegally as a felon, right?
I'm trying to remember what it was. I forget, but it was obviously a felony. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because Kyle's, that would be just misdemeanor.
Oh, by the way, I should mention, he was being served on a felony warrant. He had a prior felony conviction. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, goddamn it, what I want to. Yeah, just with the Breonna Taylor, I want to say the police, in my opinion, really screwed the pooch there because they fired so indiscriminately into a building full of people. I watched and I was like, you cannot be serious. When the bullets literally were passing, into another, the bullets were passing into another apartments and stuff like that. I'm like, what?
They found bullets in the toaster. I mean, they found bullets everywhere.
I understand when they take fire and they return fire right there, but they were like shooting also. They pulled back. Everybody was behind cover, etc., etc. They had the control over that situation, and they were still firing into the apartment. And I'm like, are you serious?
And this is the reason why people don't have an appreciation for the restraint that Kyle showed.
Yes.
Because Kyle was if Kyle was one of those police officers, Gage would be dead. And there's probably about 2 more people that'd be laying on that street.
Yes,
there too.
100%.
I'm going to do another one here in Louisville, Kentucky. They were clearing out a house just because they heard that there was a guy doing drugs inside it. So they have their guns out. Police officer sees a guy behind a mattress, yells, "Show me your hands," and fires. And then after she fires, she goes, "Oh shit." Right? She claimed that she was trying to turn on her flashlight on her gun and it went off. Like, okay, sure. No, she panicked. She just saw a figure in open fire, and the guy didn't die.
Well, and if she would be claiming that, I would actually charge her with negligence, because then she should not supposed to have a finger on the trigger. She should have the finger, for example, on a slide, or basically, because that is then you just confess to a negligence.
Sure. Negligent discharge.
Yeah, 100%.
And I'll say this, was never indicted, not even for assault, nothing.
And I think there's a part of the hate to Kyle is because people put him together with police. They have a problem with police, and they put him together there. Sure, he's a fan of a police, but his actions, you cannot basically how to say that, overlap, or what I mean, put them together. He's still just a civilian, just a person, just a regular guy. You know what I mean? And so,
and these people that come along and they say, "Oh, he is so evil. He even had a pro-police Facebook message. By the way, he should be in charge. He should be in jail for murder. Why didn't he let the police handle this?" It's like, oh, come on. Is it too much to ask to have a consistent argument?
If we can do that, but.
I'll tell you another problem that we're seeing here. People are just believing testimony, and they'll hear something from someone, and that's what he's saying, but they don't understand. Yes. People lie. Yeah. I don't think, and Kyle lied. He lied to Ryan Balch about his age. He lied to Ryan about his EMT certification. But everybody lies, and yet when you hear testimony about what Kyle did, it's all just taken at face value.
Yeah.
We learned, by the way, in the Michael Brown case, I think they must have had 60 witnesses.
That was
the one where Officer Darren Lewis is stopping a guy named Michael Brown. He's huge. He's like 6'7", 300 pounds.
Yeah, and he was unarmed, but he was like basically giant, right? And he got into scuffle with the police officer. Yeah, and as I even remembered, and that was far before I was interested in any channel, because that's like years and years back. I think I was even at school at the time. Like, when was that?
Oh, this was like one of the very first of the riots that took place. And I'm trying to remember the year.
Yeah, it doesn't like really
But
matter.
one of the things that came out of that was right after the person that was there was two people walking, Michael Brown and his friend. I'm trying to remember his name, and I'll probably remember it in a moment. They shot Michael Brown. His friend ran off. His friend shows back up at the scene of the crime and immediately goes to the media. Doesn't go to the police to tell them what happened. He goes to the media and he starts to talk. And his comment was that Michael Brown held his hands up and the policeman opened fire on him. Pretty soon, a lot of witnesses are coming forward saying, I heard I saw what happened. Michael Brown had his hands up and the police officer just opened fire on him. But here's what happened. Their question now is like, well, why is it that the blood on the pavement is nowhere near where you claim he was shot? Well, they finally had to admit one by one that they had heard what happened from this other dude and then claimed that they saw it too. Okay. And so the FBI asked, well, why would you do such a thing? And they said, I wanted to be a part of something, which in other words is I wanted to convict the cop because he was a cop, and this is an opportunity to get a cop convicted. And so, and by the way, one by one in the grand jury report, I think it was the Department of Justice lined it out and said, we cannot trust this witness. This witness stands no chance under cross-examination. And it just turns out that of all those people that were claiming that they saw the officer being unjustified, one by one, they admitted they were either lying or they disappeared, wouldn't show up anymore. So in the end, not a single person was able to come forward and make the claim that the officer was unjustified. And so they basically said, we're not going to indict him. But what was interesting about this case was this was one of the very few times, in fact, maybe the only time I've ever heard, where the prosecution gave the grand jury all the evidence. Prosecutions never do that. But the prosecution gave them all of the testimony. And of course, everybody was mad at the prosecution. Why'd you do that? Why didn't you get him indicted? Well, the prosecution knows that the officer is innocent. They didn't want to try him. And this is a case where, look, we don't want to be the ones to tell the community that we're not going to press charges. We're going to let the grand jury say that. And so they gave the grand jury everything. The grand jury looked at this and said, oh, hell, this is not even close to being indictable. Yeah. And so, but today, Michael Brown, in fact, it was the, what was it? The American Mathematical Society sent out a notice to all of its members that they stand behind the Ferguson rioters and stuff like that because Michael Brown was shot unjustifiably along those lines. So the American Mathematical Society, which is your mathematicians, even they fell for it. Amazing.
That's with that, just with the Michael Brown, I remember even it was in Czech media, and even they were like, they were literally saying, oh yeah, there's plenty of conflicting testimonies. Witnesses are saying they wrote them down, like some of them they translated them, and there was one witness saying this and the other this, which is different. Very like you cannot mistake those two, like they describe to like the same event completely differently. And third witness, and I said, okay, that doesn't make fucking sense. You know what I mean?
Well, I think what happened a lot of those times, they went to the media and told the media what the media wanted to hear. Then they went to the grand jury, and the grand jury says, oh, by the way, you're under oath, and if you lie, we're going to throw your ass in jail. And they're like, oh, wait, okay. Well, that I may not have seen it quite like that. I don't remember what I saw. And they started backpedaling on a lot of their stuff. A lot of them got so scared they wouldn't even show up at the grand jury. I thought that they could be subpoenaed for it, but evidently not. But they couldn't find them. They just fled.
Yeah, so. And basically this is something where you are having problems with complete freedom of speech, completely unrestricted, because let's be honest, what the media did was beyond irresponsible. And in my opinion, there should be, this is my perspective, we have it be a bit different when it comes to freedom of speech. We, for example, cannot deny Holocaust. We were, as a whole nation, agreed that it's completely, like it happened. And whoever denies that, no, that is crime, like in Czech Republic, But this would basically fly to some ethics committee or something like that, where the media would be then fined, for example, quite heavily for doing this. Because we have also a law when it comes to elections that the last week before elections, polls, there cannot be any polls published. Like it's completely, like let the people decide whatever they think. And for example, here you Yanks can think, hey, that's not freedom of speech and stuff like that. I'm not pushing it on you. I'm just saying how we have it, and we are perfectly happy with that.
Well, the media here, there was a time back in the day when you had a witness, the media person would ask some tough questions, like, well, it was dark. Are you sure you saw that? I mean, they would almost act like, a cross-examination thing. That's long gone. They don't do that anymore. And now they've replaced it with what I call the family style of news journalism, where the journalists now act like they're all part of a friendly group, like they're hanging out at the water cooler. Let's talk about what this event is, and we're just kind of listening in on it. And so there's a lot of this. Can you kind of help us there, Brad? Thank you, Brad. And they're thanking each other and like that. And what's happening is that they realize that if they actually ask tough questions, people won't come on those shows. And so they lose audience that way. So the easiest way to get, people to get on there and get an audience is not to ask any tough questions and let the person just talk. But the downside, of course, is that, it's free speech. I get it. I'm not saying that we can throw people in jail for doing this. No. I'm just saying it's not ethical to do this kind of work. Yes. And I've said it, and and this is, by the way, my opinion. It does not reflect the opinion of Paul here, but journalism is the candy store of a university curriculum. Back in the day, it was considered a much more rigorous curriculum. Now, okay. It's off city. And so we end up with a lot of people who don't have any investigative skills at all. And this is what happens.
I agree with you, because basically one of the things that they teach you, be it, I have a science background, but I also know this when it comes to journalism, because at college I was, at the dorm, I had a roommate who was, journal. And they teach you to basically how to think properly, how to investigate, to basically remove, not to look for something, just to look. You know what I mean? Like Neil says, hunting the witches, like the witch hunts and stuff like that, when you're looking for the devil. And they are, like, literally, they are looking for racism everywhere. And he mentioned, for example, the Godzilla movie, where the general, like a white general, told, basically denied the request or did something that was warned from Japanese, from Asian scientist, and it was super stupid. And it is stupid, but the journalist seen it as a racism. Well, you seen it as a racism because you were looking for racism, and it's so dangerous, especially in the media, because then, media prints it. A lot of people read it, and basically we've seen this stuff, maybe different motives, where the people were purposely printing falsehoods and like propaganda, like in Nazi Germany. And look what it did. Because you need, in order to basically mobilize a nation to go to war with the world, you need their support on your side. And that was some wild propaganda, that they did in Nazi Germany.
Well, just to show you how deep the problem is, they created Politifact at one point, and the whole idea behind Politifact was to have a sort of a committee of people that are supposed to be on both sides of the aisle, right? And that didn't last. That would examine claims and come out with true, false. That didn't last long at all. and then it became just another propaganda tool. And now it's even a bigger propaganda tool than the media that they were supposed to be analyzing.
No.
It's and Snopes became that way as well. There was a time when Snopes first started out that it was probably more reasonable than it is now, but now it's a propaganda tool.
Yeah.
And by the way, probably the person who's been afflicted by this more than just about anybody, Kyle. Just the whole narrative that got him smeared was media driven, and
influencers. You know what I mean? Like YouTube personalities. Jesus Christ, I forgot what was his name on YouTube. He has glasses, he has beard, and like he has a really good setup around 500,000 subscribers. I forgot his name, and he was just talking, and he was saying such like literal falsehoods that we know are falsehoods that at the time we knew are falsehoods. But he clearly lies because he claimed this is. By the way, this is a thing that that I basically commented here a wee bit on you Americans, but I not again. That's how I see it. But me as an outsider, is that quite a lot of times you basically don't say I think this has happened, but it is this happened. You know what I mean? And they basically you guys quite a lot on average mistake your assumptions, your speculations for facts, even though you say it, and even if you just say it and you actually think it, well, if you have 500,000 subscribers, it influences just that basically that this mishap, even if it would be mishap, that influences a lot of people.
Yeah, it starts out with I think, and then it just sort of over time becomes it is. So people when they first come across this stuff, we're not sure, but we think that, and then within a couple of days, the narrative is changed, and it's just a gradual progression. It seems to show up all the time here. It as an example, you go back to the whole thing with the rifle carrying across state lines. We're not sure, but it appears that Kyle Rittenhouse carried the rifle across state lines. What happened within one day? It became a factual statement.
Okay. Yeah, precisely. And Young Turks are seriously guilty of lying on this, for months. Their latest video was was it in February or something like that on Kyle Rittenhouse, something like that. It was this year. And they were constantly hammering. He crossed the state lines with the rifle. And literally the federal, what was the charge? Was it no, that was not that was Illinois charge, right? That was dismissed. That literally said no, the rifle was the whole time in Wisconsin, never crossed state lines. And they simply forget this, and they claim to be journalists. You know what I mean? It's disgusting.
Yeah, whatever mistakes you made, rather than going back and saying, hey, we got a correction here, they just drop it.
Yeah, precisely.
Retraction, a retraction would be very healthy, I think, but they're not going to do it. I've done it on a couple occasions, but, and there's some videos I no longer are available because, in my opinion, they contain information that was misleading. I took them down.
Yeah. Just to audience, what I was doing, knife open in my pocket, so I have a wee bit of a hole in my pants, in pocket. So new pants, great. By the way, if somebody's freaking out that I have a knife even at home, we literally in my culture and in Czech Republic we have a saying. I'll say it even in Czech. Každý správný muž má u sebe nůž. It means every proper man has a knife at him. You know what I mean? It's simply how we are. We basically.
You want to know what it is in Oklahoma? Replace knife with gun, and you got.
It's not necessarily for self-defense, but it's an incredibly useful tool, and just even at home, here and there. Oh yeah, oh Apple, cool. I don't have to go, to kitchen or something like that. So. I'm just making a video, if somebody's wondering. This is a 30-year-old rum from Dominican Republic, like I got for my 30th birthday. And
I do like
it
rum.
is,
Yeah.
well, I basically started to collect, like alcohol, and I was like, hey, could have some small hobby. So I got, like interested in that. Maybe they will think, like I have a sponsor or something. I'll leave it here.
Well, I was, because that's a thing, right? I noticed a lot of the YouTubers are dragging out their best liquors and stuff and talking about them, which is kind of interesting. I mean, I like that. I mean, because it's a really quick way of learning about some new whiskey you may not have tried before.
Yeah.
The thing about it, though, is for me, one, I'm not really supposed to be having liquor here, and two, it's 3:00 in the afternoon. I'm not sure I want to be drinking liquor now. If this was like 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock at night, it would be different. But
it's not a problem like in Czech Republic, because like we are constantly we are either first or second or third, like when it comes to alcohol consumption per capita, like in the world. And you could say, hey, that's pretty alarming. We should like basically tone it down. It's very unhealthy. No, my countrymen are like, oh god damn it, we need to like get back like to number one. Basically that they take a point of pride, basically. But hey. Whatever, I believe in free will, and if it's even that, hey, you do you, basically. I want to basically something included earlier when I was talking about the basically just to humanize myself a wee bit and pitch kind of a good idea. It's just on a personal level. I was a few weeks at a friend's wedding, and they are really into like a HEMA, that's the medieval sword fighting and stuff like that there. Okay. And basically I gave them, like, I wanted to give them a sword, but unfortunately I know just the bride, by the way. I don't know the groom that much, and I didn't know his favorite sword because he's into the sword fighting really, and I didn't know his type, etc. So the logistical reasons were basically not happening there. So I just gave them cash, and I was like, hey guys, like I had this really cool idea. And by the way, whoever who thinks it's cool, you can adopt it to American, maybe on a gun, where basically they could have a family. A sword, what I mean, where they would have a sword, and on that their names, the date of their wedding, basically their union, and then add, for example, their children, like if they have them, and their children when they get married, and you continue. So if you, for example, think whoever's watching, that's a cool idea, you could do it, for example, with a gun on a receiver, like something, something with a proper, nothing polybar, AR-15s and stuff like that, something with metal, and kind of a big gun probably, so yeah. I don't know.
They you can do wraps here, so basically it just beats them. Okay, I actually think that Kyle kind of missed the boat on this, because he has his likeness that he could license, and if he licensed out his likeness for for coatings on like AR-15s, holy cow, a lot of people be buying it. I'd pay for it. Yeah. The trouble is that he's having is that there's a lot of people that are selling his likeness stuff off. I realize they don't think they're doing anything wrong by doing that, but you can't make money off of his likeness.
Yeah, that's one thing, and definitely not only the money, but just without what if he doesn't agree with basically this whatsoever? You know what I mean? That's wrong. That's just wrong. 100%.
Yeah, I have I've responded on Twitter a few times when people have got like a flag with him on it, and I've just told them you just can't do that. It's not fair to him. Sure. And but I don't know why he hasn't licensed his likeness off. Oh my gosh, you could make a ton of money.
And he needs that.
Yeah. Oh, he does, and he's by the way becoming he's going to become a nurse. That's his deal now.
Yeah.
Hey, if I was him, firearms instructor. Hell, there'd be people coming from Hawaii to take classes from that dude.
Yeah.
So he would be full-time busy, and the speaking circuit. If and I'm assuming he's going to be exonerated in the end. Of course, if he's convicted, that changes everything. But if he's exonerated, the book deals, the public speaking deals are going to be all over the place.
Yeah.
And that's where, if I was him, that's where I would go. But,
well, it's one thing, and I hope he will get paid from all those lies, all those like smear campaigns, etc., for suing like the media. It's like Sandman did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's why Barnes is on the defense team now. Yeah. Barnes isn't joining that team for his criminal prowess. Mm-hmm. I think he has done some criminal law. He's on there because they're going to be suing the ever-living crap out of everybody once this is over.
I honestly hope they go full on after Young Turks.
Oh, I hope the Chicago Tribune, they can go under the Milwaukee Sentinel Journal. They might have to change their name to the Kyle Rittenhouse Sentinel Journal or whatever, because he's going to own everything they have and everything they ever will have because of the stuff that they have been pulling. For example, the Milwaukee Sentinel Journal called him a dropout, and it was part of a fact thing. Fact, Kyle is a high school dropout. No, when you switch high schools, that doesn't make you a dropout, and you prejudice the jury by doing that.
Yeah.
And so, he could rake in some real big cash. His claims are much more extensive than Sandman's. I mean, Sandman got some bad publicity, right? These guys have compromised his freedom. And so, the lawsuits are going to be everywhere.
Yeah.
And, now, they might not win, but if they do, he's not going to have to be a nurse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And more power to him. It's like, if he can get some money out of this, he deserves it, in my opinion. He certainly has paid the price for it.
Yeah. Na zdraví. To your health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I say, I wished I could join you, but not at this time.
I hope not sorry for the temptation or something like that. What I want to say, with the lawsuits and stuff, I hope, I was so basically sad that Mr. Sandman didn't do this. I hope when they secure from plenty of media rich payouts, that at least the one of them, I kind of have my fingers crossed on the Young Turks, that they would, instead of money, they would force them to public apologies, like for like a week, basically publish every day a video, or maybe even a month or something. You know what I mean? Be like, we lied here, we made mistakes here, etc., etc., etc. I hope he would do that.
I think, and again, I'm not if my criminal law is lacking because I'm not a lawyer, my civil law is really lacking because that's actually much tougher to understand. But I would be under the assumption that a court cannot force them to do something like that because that's a freedom of speech issue. But however, they could offer it. They could say, "Hey, look, instead of us losing $5 billion to you, having to mow your lawns for the rest of our lives, how about if we going through a public apology thing, and that would be something that could be mediated." But I don't know if the court can impose that. No, I could be wrong.
Okay. Yeah, we have that in Czech Republic. We have basically when somebody smears somebody, the court mandates basically can mandate a public apology, and like it could be basically formal. Oh yeah, I apologize, blah blah blah. I did wrong, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, the other thing that the companies have to worry about is by making a public apology, do they open themselves up for litigation by others? And that may be one of the reasons why they're just going to go ahead and just pay out, because the payout thing is something that they can actually hide.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm just guessing here, but that may be the reason why they don't want to do that. And also just simply, it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
To go on and say, well, we kind of lied about
that's what I mean. Because look, whoever's guys watching, and you can be pro Kyle against Kyle, but you cannot deny that plenty of media reported falsehoods. We can go, was it basically negligence or amateurism, or was that lies, purposeful? I cannot, for example, with the Young Turks, when it came to the gun crossing the state lines, like so late when they were talking about it, those are the only two options. So if they are either incompetent, nobody should listen to them.